The island of Taiwan. This island is, well, beautiful, stunning, filled with culture, history, technology, food, drink. I could go on and on. But this island, these people on the island, are at the very centre of a very dangerous conflict, in which the other side has openly threatened to use armed force to resolve the issue, including even nuclear weapons. What's even more fascinating and scary for the people of Taiwan is that this is much more than just a regular conflict. It's way more complicated than that. It's really a battle for the future of both territories. Two governments that claim the same land, claiming to be the real government of a single country, a single nation. China. Funding different countries' projects, indirectly battling each other's influence across the entire world, trying to convince the world that they are the real China. This conflict spills over across every aspect of life, whether we like it or not, i.e., it's not just politics that this conflict spills over into. In sports.
Chinese Taipei is the name that the Republic of China, better known as Taiwan, has to go by during the Olympics.
In film.
Actor John Cena has apologized to China after he called Taiwan a country during an interview promoting the newest movie in the Fast and Furious franchise. And in that interview with a Taiwanese broadcaster, Cena said, "Taiwan is the first country that can watch F9.
Through not mentioning the official name of the island, or the fact that you're not allowed to call it the C word, to even bird watching, yes, even that. But in practically every front of this conflict, one side is definitely winning. The PRC, meaning the People's Republic of China, is even trying so hard that it's forcing other countries to agree with it, forcing countries to change the name of their embassies with Taiwan. They can't even call it that, rather something a lot more wishy-washy. Whether your nation is big or small, the country you are doesn't matter. If you don't follow the People's Republic of China's rules, you'll get punished. So why is China going to such great lengths over this sensitive issue? Why is it even sensitive in the first place? Is Taiwan a part of China, as the government in Beijing claims? What is the Taiwan China conflict? Now, to understand this conflict, it's best to look at modern day maps, not only because I adore looking at them, but it really gives you a feel as to what both sides see in the conflict. So let's look at the Taiwan point of view. So, according to the government, they want you to see this. Yeah, well, let's just say good luck with trying to reclaim all that lost land, as in reality, this is what they own, and most Taiwanese people recognise this. If you went around printing maps like this and showing them to people in Taiwan, nothing would happen to you. But in China, let's just say this is very different. Incredibly different. In China, this is the map you see. Notice the long red line surrounding the sea south of China. China claims this, practically all of it, at the expense of the surrounding countries, which also have their own claims. But we also have parts of Bhutan claimed by China, along with what it calls South Tibet and Arunachal Pradesh. This is actually controlled by neighbouring India, but claimed by China. Finally, China also claims Taiwan as its own. This map is the only map you're allowed to see whilst there, showing the real situation, or it's disputed, can get you at most thrown in prison. This even applies to foreign companies based in China. A foreign company based in China has to show all of China's claims on a map, otherwise it can't be printed or sold outside of China. So to understand this dispute much better, let's look at the geography background on the two and the history first behind this complex dispute. So let's start with the bigger area of land and its background information and geography. China, or the PRC, People's Republic of China as it's officially known in the world, is a country in Eastern Asia bordering 14 different countries, with North Korea to its east, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, sometimes called Burma, to its south, along with 3 bits of disconnected border with India, with Nepal and Bhutan between the bits to its southwest, and a bit of border with Pakistan, a small piece of border with Afghanistan, and Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan also to its west. Next there are 2 bits of border with Russia to its northeast, mainly, along with a tiny bit in the west. Finally, the most amount of border among all the countries that border the PRC is Mongolia to its north, separating these 2 Russian bits of border. With all these neighbours, it means that China has the most countries that it borders land-wise, along with Russia, also at 14 countries. With over 1.4 billion people, China is the most populated country on Earth easily, with only India rivaling it at second place with just over 1.3 billion people. It's interesting to know that the vast majority of all these Chinese people, at 94%, live southeast of this line, in megacities such as Shenzhen, Shanghai, and the capital city, Beijing. Ethnically, the vast majority of China is homogeneous at just over 91% Han Chinese. The rest of the minority ethnic groups mainly live in the lesser populated autonomous areas of China, including places such as Inner Mongolia, where ethnic mainly Buddhist Mongols are, Guangxi province in the far south, where the Zhuang people, who follow overwhelmingly the Mo faith, mainly live. Other examples of other provinces with minority ethnic groups we could talk about would be Xinjiang in northwestern China, where the vast majority of Muslims live. These people are more Turkic in origin than Han Chinese, as they are related to the neighbouring Central Asian countries. Tibet to its south of this region, in southwestern China, is probably the most famous autonomous region of China. This region is primarily inhabited by Buddhists and is well known for its very high mountains and its suppressed independence movement going on here. And the final example I wanted to talk about was Hainan Island, which is the smallest province of China and the only island controlled province, because it claims Taiwan as a province but it doesn't control it. Anyway, although ethnically it is mainly Han Chinese, it's very different climate wise to the rest of China, earning it the nickname the Hawaii of China. This makes it a very popular domestic tourist destination. All these provinces make China the 4th largest country in the world at just over 3.7 million square miles. However, if you include all disputed areas, this actually only just makes China the 3rd largest country in the world, beating the United States of America. Finally, although China is officially atheist, although a large community of other religions do exist as we mentioned, many Chinese Communist Party members do practice their own folk religions. All told, about 60% roughly are either atheists or follow their own sort of religion. The rest comprise of mainly Buddhists, Taoists, Muslims, and a very small yet growing Christian community. The Taiwan, or its official name, the Republic of China, lies also in Eastern Asia, away from the PRC by the Taiwan Strait, which is around 100 miles wide. At over 12,460 land square miles, if it was a fully recognised United Nations member country, it would be larger than Guinea-Bissau in Western Africa, but yet smaller than Bhutan, landlocked in the Himalayan mountains, also like Taiwan in Asia. At over 23.5 million people, Taiwan is a well-densely populated island. However, the island is also heavily mountainous, especially in the southeastern parts of Taiwan, making obviously parts of the island a lot more populated than in some other areas of the island. When it comes to its demographics, the island is majority self-described as Taiwanese at around 85%, however ethnically the island is overwhelmingly Han Chinese at between 95 to 97% according to the Taiwanese government. The rest comprise of a very small community of foreigners at roughly about 0.2% and indigenous Taiwanese people at around the rest. These local peoples are more closely related to Austronesian people in places like the Philippines and East Timor. Finally, when it comes to religion, like the PRC, the majority of Taiwanese are either Buddhist at about 35%, whilst the other main religion is Taoism at around 33%. The rest comprise of atheists / unspecified, i.e. native religions, and also a small community of Christians. With the overview and geography of both places out of the way, why is this such a sensitive issue? What is the background history to this conflict? Well, this will be a long one, so sit back and relax as we examine some Chinese and Taiwanese history. For centuries, China was ruled by different dynasties, but by the early 17th century, the Ming dynasty ruled a good bit of modern-day China. But then peasant uprisings, natural disasters, and the overall corruption of the regime led to raids and then a full-on invasion by Manchu forces in modern-day northeastern China, eventually overthrowing the dynasty and forcing the last few Ming loyalists to a small island of Formosa, Portuguese for beautiful, or as we call it now today, Taiwan, where they stayed for a little while before the Manchus, now the Qing, built a large enough navy and invaded and conquered the island. From there, the dynasty generally lived in peace, with the occasional wars with Britain, because Britain wanted to smuggle opium into China, as you do, and some Chinese guy claiming he was the younger brother of Jesus Christ, starting a massive revolt, causing tens of millions of deaths, before he and his movement eventually got crushed. Yeah, so a bit of a history. But with all these outside influences, the country distrusted foreigners and their new technologies. This led to a stagnation in terms of technology, tactics and fresh new ideas compared to other countries, and soon other countries took advantage, this time even more than they had before. Russia, feeling that it didn't have enough land already, decides to amass troops on its border with China and basically force China to give it a load of land. But then they weren't satisfied, so they forced China to give even more land. But what really changed was the rise of another Asian power across the sea, the land of the rising sun, Japan. So when China largely neglected Taiwan and itself technologically fell behind, Japan eventually went to war with China, defeating the country and taking a bunch of territory including Taiwan. This is because although they had been in isolation for many years before this era, just like the Qing dynasty in China, they, unlike them, modernized a lot better. From there, the country continued to decline until an uprising funded by an iconic, well-educated doctor, Dr. Sun Yat-sen, helped take over large parts of China. But by 1912, the revolutionaries and the imperial government were exhausted and stuck in a stalemate, and the military leader of the Qing dynasty, Yuan Shikai, who was basically the leader of the government at this point, began to negotiate and reach a deal with the revolutionaries. In exchange for forcing the Emperor Puyi to abdicate and get his government to recognise the new republic, Yuan would then become president of the new Republic of China. But being the power-hungry strongman that he was, he thought, hey, why not bring back the old empire? Although one important difference, I should be the emperor. However, outside his head, basically nobody wanted this, and so he would abdicate a short while after crowning himself emperor and would die a little while later. With that, the rest of China broke into pieces, with individual warlords ruling large parts of China. Distressed at how the country was not a strong united republic anymore, Sun Yat-sen and his newly revived Nationalist Party sought to reunify China again, and by that, defeat all the warlords and retake all the lost territory that had seceded from China, i.e. Tibet and Mongolia. Meanwhile, in 1921, the CCP, meaning the Communist Party of China, was formed in Shanghai. Whilst the Nationalist Party had tens of thousands of soldiers, and the Communist Party only a few hundred members at the start of the 1920s, the newly formed Soviet Union, led eventually by Joseph Stalin, asked the two parties to form an alliance in exchange for military aid, and despite their different ideologies, they both wanted to unify China, and so they did. With both groups fighting the warlords, they soon began to take most of China. However, in 1925, Sun Yat-sen died, and his successor, Chiang Kai-shek, began to believe that the rapidly growing and ever more powerful CCP was much more of a threat than an ally against the warlords, and so he would attack the CCP, slaughtering communists and starting the Chinese Civil War. With the country utterly destroying itself, the world continued to watch on, and soon the Japanese would take advantage of the situation and invade Manchuria from Japanese Korea. While Chiang really didn't appreciate Japan doing this, he saw the communists as the larger threat, and so the Civil War continued and the Japanese threat ignored. Throughout the mid-1930s, the Japanese became increasingly threatening and more greedy as it eyed up more parts of China. What was Chiang doing? Still trying to kill and chase after Chinese communists, despite the ever-growing and more pressing Japanese threat, until finally his own generals kidnapped Chiang and forced him to put the Civil War on hold and form a united front against the Japanese, and so he reluctantly did so. Now afterwards, he killed many of those generals for that, whilst house arrested others. He still decided to stick with the forced agreement and prepare for the impending Japanese invasion. A year later, the Japanese attacked China, and despite all this preparation, China was far from ready for this fight, this new world war. As this is a pretty long story, I shall do this in 2 parts, so I hope you enjoyed this. Maybe like the video if you did, and maybe subscribe with notifications on if you haven't already. And as always, thanks for watching this video.